I didn't marry one person. I married two. It took me 3 years to figure that out. His name was Derek. We met at work. He was in accounting. I was in HR. We'd pass each other in the break room, smile, make small talk about the weather or the coffee or whatever was happening in the building that day. He seemed normal, stable. The kind of guy who showed up on time and did his job and didn't cause drama. After a few months of these little interactions, he asked me out. We went to dinner, Italian place downtown. He was polite. He pulled out my chair. He asked about my family. He told me about his job. He made me laugh. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and he said, "I'd really like to see you again." I said yes. We dated for a year before he proposed. During that time, I met his mother exactly twice. The first time was at a family barbecue. She was nice enough, a little formal. She shook my hand and said it was lovely to meet me. She asked what I did for work. She nodded politely when I answered. The second time was at Thanksgiving. She hosted. The house was perfect. Everything matched. The table was set like something out of a magazine. She served the meal and smiled and asked if everyone had enough to eat. Derek was attentive to her. He got up to help her carry things. He complimented the food. He made sure she was comfortable. I thought it was sweet. I thought, he's a good son. That's a green flag, right? Looking back, I should have seen it. The way he looked at her when she spoke. The way he waited for her approval before he laughed at a joke. The way his whole body was oriented toward her, even when he was sitting next to me. But I didn't see it. I saw a man who respected his mother. And I thought that was a good thing. We got married in the spring. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. His mother wore white. I remember noticing that. I remember thinking it was a little strange. But Derek didn't say anything, so I didn't either. At the reception, she gave a speech. She talked about Derek as a little boy, how special he was, how close they'd always been, how no one understood him the way she did. She looked at me when she said that last part, just for a second, just long enough for me to feel it. And then she smiled and everyone clapped and the moment passed. We went on our honeymoon. 2 weeks in Hawaii. It was beautiful. We had a good time. I thought everything was perfect. When we came back, we moved into an apartment Derek had already picked out. I'd seen pictures, but I hadn't been there in person. He'd signed the lease while I was busy with wedding planning. He said he wanted to surprise me. When I walked in, I noticed the furniture right away. It was nice. Really nice. Expensive looking. I said, "Where did all this come from?" He said, "My mom helped me pick it out." I said, "Oh, I thought we were going to do that together." He said, "She has good taste. I thought you'd like it." I looked around. The couch, the curtains, the art on the walls. Everything had this same feeling, this same style. Clean, coordinated, perfect. It didn't feel like me, but I told myself it was fine. It was just furniture. A few weeks later, we were talking about where to go for Christmas. I wanted to visit my family. They lived a few states away. I hadn't seen them in months. Derek said, "We're going to my mom's." I said, "Well, maybe we could split the time. A few days with your family, a few days with mine?" He said, "She's expecting us for the whole week." I said, "Did you already tell her we'd be there?" He said, "Of course, it's Christmas." I felt something tighten in my chest. I said, "I would have liked to be part of that decision." He looked at me like I'd said something unreasonable. He said, "She's my mother. It's important to her." I said, "My family is important to me." He got quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like a door closing. Then he said, "We'll talk about it later." We didn't talk about it later. We went to his mother's house for Christmas. That became the pattern. Any decision that involved his mother, he'd already made it before he told me. Where we spent holidays, what we did on weekends, how we spent money. I'd find out after the fact. Like the time he bought a new car. I came home from work and there it was in the driveway. He was so excited. He said his mom had helped him negotiate the deal. I said, "We have a car." He said, "That one's old. This one's better." I said, "Did we talk about this? Did we agree we needed a new car?" He said, "I'm handling it. Don't worry about it." I said, "But it's our money. Shouldn't we decide together?" He got annoyed. He said, "Why are you making this into a problem? I did something good. I got us a good deal." My mom worked really hard to help me find this. There it was again, his mom. I started noticing how often she came up in conversations, how often her opinion was the reason for something. We painted the bedroom a color I didn't like. He said his mom thought it would look nice. We bought a dining table that was too big for the space. He said his mom found it on sale. We skipped a friend's wedding because it conflicted with his mom's birthday dinner. Every time I questioned it, every time I said I wished he'd talk to me first, he'd get defensive. He'd say I was being ungrateful or difficult, or that I didn't understand how important family was. And then one day, about a year into the marriage, I said something I'd been holding back for months. We were sitting in the living room. His mom had just called for the third time that day. He'd been on the phone with her for over an hour. When he finally hung up, I said, "Do you think maybe she calls too much?" The look on his face, I'll never forget it. He said, "What did you just say?" I said, "I just mean she calls a lot, multiple times a day, and you're always dropping everything to talk to her." He stood up. His whole body was tense. He said, "She's my mother." I said, "I know. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to her. I'm just saying maybe we could have some boundaries." He said, "Boundaries? You want me to put boundaries on my relationship with my mother?" I said, "I want us to have space to be a couple. I want to feel like I'm part of decisions. I want to feel like I matter." He said, "You're attacking her." I said, "I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just trying to talk to you about how I feel." He said, "She's done everything for me. She's sacrificed everything for me. And you want me to push her away because you're jealous." Jealous. That word hit me like a slap. I said, "I'm not jealous. I'm your wife. I just want to feel like we're building a life together." He said, "We are building a life together. You just don't appreciate it because you're too focused on tearing down my mother." I stared at him. I realized in that moment that there was no way to win this. If I said anything about his mother, I was the villain. If I stayed quiet, I disappeared. Things got worse after that. He started spending more time at her house. He'd go over after work. He'd stay for dinner. He'd come home late and say they were just catching up. When I asked if I could come along, he'd say she wanted some one-on-one time with him. When I suggested we take a trip, just the two of us, he'd say his mom needed help with something that weekend. When I tried to plan anything without checking with her first, he'd call her to see if she thought it was a good idea. I felt like I was living with a ghost. He was there physically, but mentally, emotionally, he was somewhere else. With her. I started to dread family gatherings because that's when it was most obvious. At his mother's house, he'd sit next to her. He'd laugh at her jokes. He'd ask her opinion on everything. He'd barely look at me and she'd smile. This little satisfied smile, like she'd won something. One night, at a dinner party at her house, I was talking to Derek about a vacation I wanted to take. Somewhere tropical, just the two of us. His mother overheard. She said, "Oh, Derek doesn't like the beach. He burns too easily." I said, "I think he can decide that for himself." She laughed. This light, dismissive laugh. She said, "Honey, I've known him his whole life. I think I know what he likes." Derek didn't say anything. He just kept eating. I looked at him. I said, "Do you like the beach?" He shrugged. He said, "I don't know, I guess." His mother said, "See? He doesn't even know. That's why he needs me to help him figure these things out." I felt my face get hot. I said, "He's a grown man. He doesn't need you to figure things out for him." The table went silent. Derek looked at me. His face was hard. He said, "Don't talk to my mother like that." I said, "I wasn't being rude. I was just saying." He said, "You were being rude, and you need to apologize." I looked around the table. Everyone was staring at me, waiting. I said, "I'm sorry if I offended you." His mother smiled. She said, "It's okay, sweetheart. I know you're still adjusting to being part of the family." Adjusting like I was the problem, like I was the outsider who didn't understand how things worked. After that night, I started pulling away. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't know how to stay. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I was seeing something clearly that everyone else refused to see. Derek and his mother weren't just close, they were enmeshed. She was in every corner of our life, every decision, every conversation. And he didn't see a problem with it, he saw it as love. I tried talking to him one more time. I sat him down. I said, "I need you to hear me. I feel like I'm not part of this marriage. I feel like every decision is made by you and your mother, and I'm just here watching. He said, That's not true. I said, It is true. She picked out our furniture. She decided where we'd spend Christmas. She tells you what to eat, what to wear, where to work, and you let her. He said, She's trying to help. I said, I don't want her help. I want a marriage with you, not with her. He said, You're being dramatic. I said, I'm being honest. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what else to say. He got up. He left the room. He called his mother. He called. I sat there listening to him talk to her, listening to him tell her how unreasonable I was being, how I didn't understand, how hard this was for him. And I realized he wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to choose me because in his mind, he didn't have to choose. He could have both his mother and his wife. And if I had a problem with that, I was the one being difficult. I left 6 months later. It wasn't an easy decision. I loved him, or I loved the person I thought he was, but I couldn't keep living in a marriage where I was always going to be second. When I told him I was leaving, he didn't fight for me. He just looked sad, confused. He said, I don't understand what I did wrong. And that was the saddest part. He really didn't. It's been 2 years now. I'm 31. I'm still single. Still figuring things out, but I'm not in that house anymore. That house that never felt like mine. With furniture I didn't pick and a life I didn't build, I'm in my own space now, my own life. And I'm learning what it feels like to make decisions without someone's mother hovering in the background. If you're listening to this because you're in something similar, because your partner's parent is too involved, because you feel like you're always competing for attention, I just want to say one thing. It's not in your head. If you feel like you married two people, you probably did. And it's okay to walk away from that, even if everyone tells you you're being selfish. Even if they say family is important. Even if your partner doesn't understand, you deserve to be the priority in your own marriage. Not the second choice, not the backup plan. The priority. And if your partner can't give you that, they're not ready to be married. Not to you, not to anyone.